She accidentally sent a voice message calling her Mafia boss slow and pompous, and his reaction left everyone speechless. Amelia Nerli was about to commit career suicide, and she didn't even know it yet. It was 4:05 p.m. on a deadline day that had already aged her 5 years. Her boss, Gaudenzio Pisani, Sicily's most dangerous man masquerading as a legitimate CEO, had just handed her his fourth handwritten ledger of the afternoon. No spreadsheet. No digital backup. Just cramped, fountain pen cursive that belonged in a museum, not a modern acquisition worth $500 million. Before continuing the story, please consider giving this video a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more stories to you. Amelia was overwhelmed, furious, and desperately venting to her best friend while simultaneously cross-referencing antiquated territorial maps with a magnifying glass she'd found in a drawer that probably predated electricity. Her phone was propped against a bronze statue of some dead Pisani ancestor, recording a voice message. "Sonia, I swear to God, this man is going to get us all killed," Amelia hissed into what she was absolutely certain was her best friend's private chat. "He just made me authenticate a property deed using a wax seal." "A wax seal, Sonia? Like we're negotiating the Treaty of Versailles. And the terrifying part? He's sitting there behind that ridiculous mahogany desk." She glanced up at the image in front of her. Gaudenzio, all sharp Italian tailoring and predatory stillness, leaning forward like a panther about to strike, looking like some kind of pompous dinosaur from a Mafia museum. All that old-world power and dead-eyed intimidation, and I can't even properly panic because I'm too busy being annoyed that his slow, ancient traditions are going to collapse this entire deal the second someone with actual malware shows up. She hit send with the confidence of someone who'd selected the contact 3 times. The silence that followed was the kind that precedes executions. Amelia's junior assistant, Marco, made it sound like he was being strangled. The archival clerk in the corner actually dropped an entire box of century-old documents. Gaudenzio's personal bodyguard, Luca, positioned by the door, closed his eyes slowly, the way people do when witnessing an irreversible tragedy. "What?" Amelia looked down at her phone. Message sent to Pisani Family Holdings, Board of Directors, 23 members. Her blood turned to ice water. The group chat, the one containing every capo, every territory overseer, every person who'd killed for far less than public disrespect, exploded like a digital funeral pyre. Salvatore, Consigliera to Pisani Territory North Eyes Don Carmine, Bellomo Acquisition Liaison Dinosaur. Pietro Moretti, Chief Consigliera, you will not be missed, Miss Nerli. And then, cutting through the chaos like a knife through silk, one final message appeared: Gaudenzio Pisani, my office. Now, the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Amelia looked up slowly from her phone to find Gaudenzio Pisani standing in the doorway of his inner office, backlit by the golden Sicilian sunset streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. He wasn't moving. He wasn't shouting. He was simply looking at her with the expression of a man who'd just been handed an exceptionally interesting problem. And that, Amelia realized with absolute horror, was so much worse than anger. Amelia's legs felt like they'd been filled with cement as she crossed the polished marble floor toward Gaudenzio Pisani's inner sanctum. Every step echoed in the oppressive silence. Marco wouldn't meet her eyes. Luca, the bodyguard, had assumed the expression of a man attending a wake, hers specifically. The door to Gaudenzio's private office stood open like the mouth of a very expensive, very deadly trap. She stepped inside. The room was exactly what she'd expected from a man allergic to the 21st century. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes that had probably cost more than her entire education, an antique globe that predated 2 world wars, and that massive mahogany desk, hand-carved, naturally positioned to catch the golden Sicilian light like some kind of Renaissance painting of power and intimidation. Gaudenzio stood with his back to her, hands clasped behind him, staring out at the sprawling estate below. He hadn't acknowledged her entrance. He didn't need to. The weight of his presence was acknowledgement enough. Amelia's mouth had gone completely dry. She tried to formulate an apology, a defense, anything that might delay the inevitable firing. Or worse. Pompous dinosaur, Gaudenzio said quietly, still not turning around. His voice was rich, accented, and unnervingly calm. From a Mafia museum, you said? Oh God. He was going to make her listen to her own execution speech. Mr. Pisani, slow, ancient traditions, he continued, as though she hadn't spoken. That will collapse the entire deal the second someone with actual malware shows up. He turned then, and Amelia's breath caught despite her terror. Gaudenzio Pisani was not classically handsome in the soft, approachable way. He was handsome the way a straight razor was handsome, all clean lines and lethal precision. Mid-40s, with silver threading through dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. The tailored three-piece suit probably cost more than her car. He looked at her the way a chess master looked at an unexpectedly interesting move. I'm so sorry, Amelia managed, her voice smaller than she'd have liked. It was completely unprofessional and inappropriate, and I take full sit. It wasn't a request. Amelia sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk, her hands twisted together in her lap. Gaudenzio moved around the desk with the unhurried grace of a man who'd never had to rush for anything in his life. He sat, steepled his fingers, and studied her with an intensity that made her want to crawl out of her own skin. Tell me, Miss Nerli, he said softly. The malware comment. You believe our security protocols are vulnerable to digital threats. This was not the conversation she'd expected to have. What? You criticized my methods as antiquated. Slow. One dark eyebrow lifted fractionally. I'm asking if you stand by that assessment. Amelia's survival instinct screamed at her to backtrack, to grovel, to deny everything. But she'd already destroyed her career. She might as well die honest. Yes, she said, lifting her chin. Your physical security is probably impeccable. I'm sure no one gets within 100 meters of you without 17 background checks and a blood oath. But you're doing a $500 million acquisition using handwritten ledgers and wax seals, and your entire communication system runs through unsecured personal devices on a group chat that, she gestured vaguely with her phone. Apparently any idiot can accidentally broadcast their career suicide to. Something flickered in Gaudenzio's expression. It might have been amusement. It might have been respect. With a face that controlled, it was impossible to tell. You think I'm making us vulnerable, he said. I think you're running a 21st century operation with 19th century tools, and that's a disaster waiting to happen. The silence stretched between them like a drawn blade. Then Gaudenzio smiled. It was small, slight, and somehow more terrifying than his anger would have been. 6 days, he said. Amelia blinked. I'm sorry. You will have 6 days to prove your theory. He leaned forward, and suddenly all that predatory focus was aimed directly at her. You will move into the secure compound. You will have complete access to audit my personal security details and the Bellomo acquisition protocols. You will identify every digital blind spot my old guard has missed. You're not firing me? I'm testing you. His voice was silk over steel. If you're correct and my traditions have made us vulnerable, I need to know before someone exploits it. If you're wrong, and this is simply the arrogance of youth mistaking experience for incompetence. He shrugged elegantly. Then we will revisit the terms of your employment. Which was a very elegant way of saying she'd be fired. Or possibly disappeared. And if I'm right? Amelia asked, her heart hammering. Then you will have proven yourself invaluable. Gaudenzio's eyes held hers. The Bellomo acquisition closes in 7 days. There are rumors of interference, of leaks. I need someone who thinks differently than my existing advisors. Someone whose instincts run digital, not traditional. His expression hardened. Someone expendable enough that if they betray me, the loss is acceptable. There it was. The real reason. She wasn't being rewarded for her honesty. She was being used as a test case, a canary in a very expensive, very dangerous coal mine. You'll live under guard, he continued. Work under observation. Report directly to me. No outside communication except what I approve. He tilted his head slightly. Do you accept? Amelia's mind raced. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was exactly the kind of situation that got people killed in movies. but it was also the most interesting thing anyone had ever offered her. "I accept," she heard herself say. Gaudenzio's smile sharpened. "Excellent. Luca will escort you home to pack. You have 2 hours. Bring only what you need for 6 days. No external hard drives, no personal cloud access." He stood, signaling the end of the audience. "Welcome to your audition, Miss Nerli. Try not to accidentally insult anyone else to the entire board." Amelia rose on shaking legs. She'd walked in expecting execution and walked out with the most dangerous job interview of her life. As she reached the door, Gaudenzio's voice stopped her. "And Miss Nerli? For the record, I am not slow." She turned back to find him watching her with those unreadable dark eyes. "No, Mr. Pisani," she agreed quietly. "I'm starting to realize that." His answering smile was absolutely terrifying. The Pisani compound was a cage dressed up as a palace, and Amelia realized this approximately 30 seconds after the armored SUV passed through the 3rd security checkpoint. "This is excessive," she muttered, watching yet another guard with an earpiece and a very obvious shoulder holster wave them through ornate iron gates that probably cost more than her childhood home. Luca, sitting in the front passenger seat with the personality of a particularly stoic boulder, didn't respond. He hadn't responded to any of her observations during the 40-minute drive into the Sicilian hills. The man had apparently taken a vow of silence, or possibly just found her beneath conversation. The main house emerged from a grove of cypress trees like something out of an Italian tourism ad, all honey-colored stone, terracotta tiles, and climbing roses that probably had their own dedicated gardener. Gorgeous. Isolated. Absolutely, definitively a place where people could disappear without anyone asking inconvenient questions. Amelia clutched her laptop bag a little tighter. The SUV stopped in a circular driveway dominated by a fountain featuring some militant-looking saint she didn't recognize. Before she could reach for the door handle, Luca was already there, opening it with the precision of someone who'd been opening doors for dangerous people his entire life. "Your quarters are in the East Wing," he said, which were possibly the most words he'd strung together since collecting her. "2nd floor. Someone will bring your luggage. I can carry my own," but Luca was already walking toward the entrance, clearly expecting her to follow. The interior was exactly what she should have expected: marble floors polished to a mirror shine, frescoed ceilings depicting various mythological scenes of triumph and vengeance, and enough antique furniture to stock a museum. Everything screamed old money, old power, and old methods. Her room, because calling it just a room was like calling the Sistine Chapel a church, was larger than her entire apartment. 4-poster bed. Silk curtains. A writing desk that looked like it had witnessed the signing of important historical documents. An ensuite bathroom with a clawfoot tub and fixtures that were definitely real gold. And absolutely no visible electrical outlets. Amelia stood in the center of the room, slowly rotating, her laptop bag still clutched to her chest like a life preserver. "You've got to be kidding me." She finally found 2 outlets, hidden behind a tasteful oriental screen, clearly added as an embarrassing modern concession to a house that would have preferred to remain in the 1890s. Her luggage arrived moments later, delivered by a silent older woman who nodded politely and disappeared before Amelia could ask where the Wi-Fi router was. She had a sinking feeling she already knew the answer. 20 minutes later, after unpacking her essentials and changing into something more professional than her rumpled blouse, Amelia sat at the antique writing desk with her laptop open, staring at the screen in disbelief. No available networks. Not weak signal. Not password protected. Just nothing. "They don't have Wi-Fi," she said aloud to the empty room. "They're running a $500 million acquisition out of a compound with no Wi-Fi." A knock at her door interrupted what was threatening to become a full anxiety spiral. "Come in," she called. The door opened to reveal a young man, maybe mid-20s, wearing the same type of dark suit that seemed to be the unofficial uniform around here. "Miss Nerli? Don Pisani requests your presence in the operations room." Of course he did. The operations room was in the basement, because apparently every paranoid crime lord kept their nerve center underground, and it was like stepping into 2 different centuries at once. One half of the room looked like it belonged to a Cold War bunker: metal filing cabinets, a massive conference table covered in paper files, and actual physical maps marked with colored pins. Walls lined with corkboards and photographs connected by red string like some conspiracy theorist's fever dream. The other half, clearly a recent and begrudging addition, held a bank of computer monitors, secure phone lines, and what looked like a server setup that was probably state-of-the-art 5 years ago. Gaudenzio stood at the conference table with 3 other men, all of them studying a territorial map of what Amelia recognized as the Bellomo family's former holdings. He looked up as she entered, his expression unreadable. "Miss Nerli, settled in. Your guest room is lovely," Amelia said carefully. "Very historic." One of the other men, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, wearing disapproval like a second suit, snorted. "This is your modern expert? She looks like she should be planning birthday parties, not security audits." "Pietro," Gaudenzio said mildly, but there was a warning in it. "Pietro Moretti, the chief consigliere." Amelia recognized him from the board chat massacre and from the dossier she'd memorized during her tower-packing frenzy. Old guard. Traditional. Loyal to Gaudenzio since before Amelia was born. And currently looking at her like she was something unpleasant he'd scraped off his shoe. "I need to set up my workspace," Amelia said, lifting her laptop bag. "Access to your network, admin credentials for your security systems, and the Wi-Fi password would be a good start." The silence that followed was deafening. "There is no Wi-Fi," Pietro said flatly. "This is a secure facility, not a coffee shop." Amelia stared at him. "You're joking." "We use hardline connections only," another man explained, his tone slightly more diplomatic. "And those are isolated from external networks. Air-gapped for security." "Air-gapped," Amelia repeated slowly. "So your security system isn't connected to the internet." "Exactly," Pietro said, with the satisfaction of someone explaining basic arithmetic to a child. "Therefore, it cannot be hacked. It also can't receive threat updates, security patches, or real-time intelligence," Amelia countered. "You're not secure. You're just deliberately blind." Pietro's expression darkened. "Don Pisani, I must object to let her work," Gaudenzio interrupted, his eyes never leaving Amelia's face. "That's why she's here. Show us our blind spots, Miss Nerli." Amelia walked to the computer setup, setting her laptop down. "I'll need access to your acquisition files, communication logs, and personnel records." "Those are on the secure server," the diplomatic man said. "No external connections." "Fine. Get me a hardline patch cable," and she stopped, staring at the back of the nearest computer. "Is that a parallel port? When was this system installed? 2005. 2007, Pietro corrected coldly. "And it has functioned perfectly." "It's running Windows Vista," Amelia said, horrified. "Vista? That hasn't received security updates in years. You might as well hang a sign outside that says, 'Please exploit me.'" She pulled out her phone to make a note, and instantly 4 hands went to 4 concealed weapons. Amelia froze. "I'm literally just trying to open my notes app." "No phones in the operations room," Luca said from his position by the door. She hadn't even heard him follow her down. "How do you people function?" Amelia demanded, looking at Gaudenzio. "No phones, no Wi-Fi, computers from the Bush administration," carefully, Gaudenzio said, and there was something sharp in his voice now. "We function carefully, Miss Nerli. Every wire, every air gap, every restriction exists because wireless connections have cost me people I loved." The room fell silent. Amelia slowly lowered her phone. "Then let me show you," she said quietly, "how the threats have evolved while you've been hiding behind analog solutions." Gaudenzio studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "You have 6 days. Impress me." As Pietro muttered something darkly in Italian and the others returned to their maps, Amelia realized she'd just walked into exactly the kind of impossible situation her mother had always warned her about. No exits. No backup. No Wi-Fi. Just her obsolete expertise, and a roomful of armed men who thought cybersecurity meant locking the computer room door. This was going to be a very long 6 days. Day 2 of Amelia's audition began at 6 in the morning with a briefing she hadn't been warned about, in a room she hadn't known existed, with men who clearly wished she didn't exist. She arrived still clutching her first espresso of the day, delivered to her room by this same silent woman, in a cup so delicate Amelia was afraid to breathe on it. Wearing yesterday's blazer because half her clothes were still in her suitcase and the antique wardrobe in her room had defeated her with its complicated brass latches. The briefing room was smaller than the operations center, more intimate, which somehow made it more intimidating. Gaudenzio sat at the head of a table that could seat maybe 10 people, with Pietro Moretti on his right and 3 other senior men she recognized from the board chat disaster ranged along the sides. All of them looked up when she entered. None of them looked pleased. "Miss Nerli," Gaudenzio said, his tone neutral. "You're late." "I wasn't informed there was a meeting," Amelia said, sliding into the only empty chair, which, naturally, was directly across from Pietro's disapproving glare. "In this organization," Pietro said coldly, "we don't wait for invitations to be useful." Amelia took a very deliberate sip of her espresso and said nothing. Engaging with Pietro before caffeine had fully entered her bloodstream seemed like a tactical error. Gaudenzio's mouth twitched fractionally, amusement or irritation, impossible to tell, before he gestured to the spread of documents covering the table. "We're reviewing the final protocols for the Bellomo territory transfer. The ceremony is in 5 days. Everything must be perfect." The documents were, predictably, paper. Contracts, property deeds, territorial maps, financial statements, all physical, all requiring wet signatures, all completely analog. "The transfer will occur at the Bellomo estate," one of the other men explained, a scarred veteran named Salvatore whom Amelia had learned ran the Northern Territories. "Neutral ground. Representatives from both families, plus our legal witnesses. Standard protocol." "Security?" Amelia asked. "Comprehensive," Pietro said, with the pride of someone describing a beloved child. 30-person advance team conducting physical sweeps. No electronic devices permitted inside the ceremony room. All attendees screened with metal detectors. Perimeter secured by our best men, with overlapping sight lines and vehicle checkpoints at half-kilometer intervals. It sounded impressive. It sounded thorough. It sounded like something designed to stop threats from 1985. "What about the documents themselves?" Amelia asked. "How are they being transported?" "Armored courier," Salvatore said. 3-vehicle convoy, rotating routes, armed escort. "And they're only on paper? No digital backups?" "Correct," Pietro said firmly. "Paper cannot be hacked, Miss Nerli. Paper cannot be remotely altered or intercepted by some teenager in a basement with a laptop. But paper can be destroyed, forged, or stolen," Amelia countered. "And you'd have no backup, no verification, no chain of custody beyond physical possession." Pietro's expression hardened. "Which is why we have physical security. Armed guards. Loyal men. Methods that have protected this family for 3 generations. Methods designed for threats from 3 generations ago," Amelia shot back. She leaned forward, warming to her argument despite the hostile audience. "You're so obsessed with preventing digital intrusion that you've made yourselves completely vulnerable to it." "Explain," Gaudenzio said quietly. His eyes were fixed on her with that unnerving intensity that made her feel simultaneously visible and dissected. Amelia pulled out her phone, which caused the immediate tension of hands moving toward weapons, and held it up. "This device has more computing power than the entire Apollo space program. Your men all carry them, yes?" "Personal phones are screened," Pietro said stiffly. "No cameras, no recording capabilities in secure areas. But they're smartphones. They have Bluetooth, NFC, Wi-Fi capabilities even when Wi-Fi isn't connected. They're constantly searching for networks, for devices to pair with." She looked around the table. "Every single one of those phones is a potential entry point. And, because you're so confident in your physical security, I'm guessing no one's monitoring for electronic surveillance, signal hijacking, or data exfiltration." Salvatore frowned. "Our phones are checked. No spyware." "When was the last check? Who did it? What tools did they use?" Amelia asked. The silence was answer enough. "You're fighting the last war. You've built a fortress with stone walls while someone could be walking in through the wireless front door you don't believe exists." Pietro's face had gone dangerously still. Don Pisani, this is exactly the kind of paranoid, technology-dependent thinking that has weakened modern operations. We rely on loyalty, on tested methods, on tradition, Amelia interrupted. I know. I've heard the speech. But tell me something, consigliera, if your traditional methods are so effective, why does Don Pisani need me here? The room went deathly quiet. Pietro's eyes flashed. You're here because our Don is gracious enough to humor the arrogant assumptions of youth before demonstrating their irrelevance. I'm here because there's a leak, Amelia said flatly, looking directly at Gaudenzio. Isn't there? That's what you meant about rumors of interference. Someone's been feeding information out, and your traditional security hasn't caught them because you're not looking in the right places. Gaudenzio's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the atmosphere, a confirmation in his stillness. The leak could be anywhere, she continued. A compromised phone. A smartwatch someone didn't declare. A wireless printer no one thought was a security risk. You've secured the castle, but left the digital drawbridge wide open, and whoever's leaking knows it. Speculation, Pietro said dismissively. Based on nothing but your preference for blaming technology for human failures. Then let me prove it, Amelia challenged. Give me access to your communication logs, your device inventory, your network traffic. Oh wait, you don't monitor network traffic because you don't believe it exists as a threat. Miss Nerli, Gaudenzio said, his voice cutting through the rising tension like a blade. What exactly are you proposing? She took a breath, knowing this was either her breakthrough moment or her last mistake. Let me conduct a full electronic audit. Every device, every connection, every digital footprint in this operation. If I'm wrong and your traditional security is as impenetrable as the consigliera believes, you lose nothing but a few days of my incompetent fumbling. She met Pietro's hostile gaze directly. But if I'm right and someone is using your blind spots against you, we have 4 days to stop them before the Bellomo transfer becomes a catastrophe. Pietro leaned back in his chair, his expression glacial. I have served this family for 30 years, Don Pisani. I have bled for it. I have buried friends for it. And I will not sit here and be lectured by a child who thinks security is something you download from an app store. Then prove her wrong, Gaudenzio said softly. Pietro's head snapped toward his Don, surprise breaking through his controlled fury. Gaudenzio's gaze moved between his oldest advisor and his newest problem. Miss Nerli believes we have digital vulnerabilities. You believe our traditional protocols are sufficient. One of you is correct. He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. She has 4 days. Full access. Complete cooperation. His eyes settled on Pietro with unmistakable authority. From everyone. The dismissal was clear. The men stood, gathering papers, their expressions ranging from skeptical to hostile. Pietro lingered last, his attention fixed on Gaudenzio with something that looked almost like betrayal. Don Pisani, he said quietly. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, old friend, Gaudenzio replied. So do I. As the room emptied, Amelia remained seated, her heart hammering with equal parts triumph and terror. She'd just been handed exactly what she'd asked for, complete access and 4 days to prove herself. She'd also just made an enemy of the most powerful man in the organization aside from Gaudenzio himself. Gaudenzio moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back in that characteristic pose she was beginning to recognize as his thinking stance. You should know, Miss Nerli, that Pietro has saved my life on no fewer than 5 occasions. Then I hope I'm wrong, Amelia said honestly. Because if I'm right and the threat is digital, your traditional security won't see it coming until it's too late. He turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw something in his expression beyond control and calculation. It might have been concern. It might have been doubt. For days, he said. Don't waste them. As she left the briefing room, laptop bag clutched to her chest and her mind already racing through audit protocols and penetration testing strategies, one thought dominated all others. She'd just convinced a Mafia boss to let her tear apart his security infrastructure, while simultaneously enraging the second most dangerous man in the compound. Either she was about to save Gaudenzio Pisani's life, or she'd just guaranteed her own very quiet, very permanent disappearance. Could Amelia be right? Is the greatest threat hiding in plain sight within the very technology they've dismissed? And what happens when challenging tradition means questioning loyalty itself? Drop your theories in the comments below about what Amelia might uncover, and if you're hooked on this dangerous game of modern versus traditional, subscribe so you don't miss what she discovers next. Because in 4 days, everything changes. Amelia had been awake for 16 hours, fueled by espresso and spite, when her laptop did something it absolutely shouldn't have been able to do. It was almost midnight. The operations center was empty except for a single guard stationed outside, Luca, naturally, because the man apparently never slept, and Amelia hunched over a workstation in the corner, surrounded by printouts, device logs, and her own rapidly deteriorating sanity. The digital audit was going exactly as well as could be expected when working with systems designed by people who thought cloud storage was what happened before it rained. She'd spent the day cataloging every electronic device in the compound: phones, tablets, the ancient desktop computers, even the security cameras which, horrifyingly, stored footage on physical hard drives that were manually swapped out weekly like some kind of technological dark age ritual. The inventory alone had taken 8 hours. Getting anyone to actually cooperate had added another 4, with Pietro's men treating her requests like personal insults and responding with the enthusiasm of people being audited by the tax authorities. Her personal laptop sat open beside the hardwired workstation, its screen displaying her notes, meticulously backed up to her encrypted cloud drive because she wasn't an animal, when something in the corner of her vision made her freeze. The Wi-Fi icon. Her laptop's Wi-Fi icon, which had shown no networks available for 2 solid days, was suddenly displaying a connection. Amelia stared at it, her exhausted brain taking a moment to process what she was seeing. "That's impossible," she muttered. The compound didn't have Wi-Fi. That had been made abundantly, frustratingly clear. No wireless networks. Air-gapped security. The digital equivalent of living in a bunker. She clicked on the network details. Netgear_5G_hidden connected. Signal strength, excellent. Security, WPA2. Her heart started hammering. She glanced toward the door, confirming Luca was still stationed outside, then looked back at her screen. Her laptop had automatically connected to a hidden network that, according to every briefing and security protocol, didn't exist. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Okay, don't panic. Maybe it's a neighbor's network that somehow, except they were in the middle of a secured estate, miles from the nearest neighbor, behind multiple checkpoints and gates. There were no nearby networks. There shouldn't be any networks at all." Her hands were shaking as she opened her command prompt and started running basic diagnostics. If there was a hidden network operating inside the compound, someone had set it up deliberately. Someone who needed wireless connectivity without anyone knowing about it. Someone who was doing exactly what she'd warned about, using digital channels while everyone else focused on physical security. The network trace took 30 seconds. The results made her blood run cold. The network was originating from inside the compound. Not just inside the main house itself. And her laptop, in its helpful automatic way, had connected to it because she'd once linked to a network with similar credentials at a coffee shop 6 months ago, and the router was apparently using cloned settings. "You brilliant, stupid machine," Amelia breathed. Her file sync application, which she'd forgotten was running in the background, had already started its automatic backup process. A small progress bar showed 127 files queued for upload to her cloud storage. She clicked on the file list and felt her stomach drop. The files weren't from her personal folders. They were system files from the Pisani secure server, documents she'd been reviewing on the hardwired workstation. Somehow, in her exhausted state, she must have copied them to a local folder, and now her laptop was helpfully trying to sync them to the cloud through this mystery network. No, she killed the sync process, her fingers flying across the keyboard. 15 files had uploaded before she'd stopped it. 15 classified Pisani family files, now sitting on her cloud storage, transmitted through an unauthorized network that wasn't supposed to exist. She'd just committed exactly the kind of security breach she'd been brought here to prevent. But that wasn't the important part. The important part was that the breach had been possible at all. Amelia sat back, her mind racing. If her laptop could accidentally connect and transmit data through this hidden network, what else could? How long had this network been active? Who else's devices had connected to it? And what had they transmitted? She pulled out her phone, which immediately brought Luca to the door, hand on his weapon, and called the only person who would understand the significance of what she'd just found. "It's almost midnight, Miss Nerli," Gaudenzio answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the hour. Of course he was awake. The man probably slept with his eyes open. "You need to come to the operations center," Amelia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Now. And bring Pietro." "What happened?" "I found your leak. Or more accurately, I accidentally became your leak for approximately 45 seconds. She took a breath. "Sir, someone's running an unauthorized wireless network inside your compound, and it's been here long enough to have default network settings that multiple devices recognize." The silence on the other end was absolute. "I'm on my way," Gaudenzio said. "Don't touch anything." He disconnected. Amelia set down her phone and stared at her laptop screen, at the network connection that shouldn't exist, at the evidence of exactly the kind of digital vulnerability she'd been warning about. She'd been right. She desperately wished she'd been wrong. Luca appeared in the doorway. "Don Pisani is coming?" "Yes. And he's bringing Pietro." Amelia managed a weak smile. "This should be fun." They arrived within 10 minutes, Gaudenzio in shirt sleeves with his jacket missing, looking more dangerous in his partial undress than most men managed fully armed, and Pietro still impeccably suited despite the hour, his expression already set to maximum disapproval. "Show me," Gaudenzio said without preamble. Amelia gestured to her laptop. Hidden wireless network operating inside the compound. "My laptop auto-connected because it recognized the security credentials from a previous network." She pulled up her diagnostic results. "The router is somewhere in the main house, probably within 50 meters of this room. And it's been active for at least," she checked the logs, 6 months. Pietro's face had gone very still. "That's impossible." "We sweep for unauthorized signals weekly." "With what equipment?" Amelia asked. "Standard RF detectors. Same ones we've used for years." "Do they detect signals on the 5 GHz band?" "Because this is a 5G network, not the old 2.4 standard." She saw the answer in his silence. "Your detectors are outdated. They're looking for old wireless protocols. This is invisible to them." Gaudenzio moved closer, studying the screen with focused intensity. "Can you trace the physical location?" "I can try." Amelia's fingers flew across the keyboard, running a signal strength analysis. "Based on the signal propagation, somewhere below us. Basement level, probably the operations center itself or an adjacent room." "The secure server room," Pietro said quietly. His face had gone pale. "It's directly below us." The three of them exchanged glances. "Who has access to that room?" Gaudenzio asked, his voice dangerously soft. "Only senior personnel. Myself, Salvatore, Marco, and..." Pietro trailed off. "And?" Gaudenzio pressed. "The IT contractor we hired 8 months ago to upgrade the server infrastructure." Pietro looked physically ill. "On my recommendation. Because I wanted to prove we could modernize without compromising security. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so catastrophic." Amelia pulled up the network's connected device history, and what she found there made her breath catch. There are 17 devices that have connected to this network in the past month. All of them transferred data. She scrolled through the logs. "Including multiple sessions during your board meetings. During acquisition planning sessions. During everything," Gaudenzio finished. His expression was carved from ice. "Everything we've planned, discussed, or documented has potentially been compromised." Pietro looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "Don Pisani, I take full responsibility later," Gaudenzio cut him off. "Right now, we have 4 days until the Bellomo transfer, and we have to assume every detail has been leaked to whoever set this up." He turned to Amelia. "Can you trace where the data was sent?" "I can try, but if they're smart, and they clearly are, they'll have routed it through multiple proxies and VPNs. It'll take time we might not have." She hesitated. But I can do something else. What? Amelia's fingers hovered over her keyboard, and she felt a wild, reckless certainty settle over her. I can leave the network active. Monitor it. Feed it specific information. She looked up at Gaudenzio. If whoever set this up thinks they're still invisible, they'll keep using it. And we can use that. A trap, Pietro said softly. A trap, Amelia confirmed. Using their own blind spot against them. They think you're too traditional to catch digital surveillance. She smiled, sharp and certain. Let's prove them wrong. Gaudenzio studied her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression, respect, perhaps, or recognition. Do it, he said. And Miss Nerli? No more accidental breaches. No promises, Amelia said. But I'll try to keep my clumsiness pointed at the right targets. As Pietro began making calls to track down the IT contractor and Gaudenzio started the grim process of determining what information had been compromised, Amelia turned back to her laptop and the hidden network still glowing on her screen. She'd stumbled into the answer by accident, through her own careless file management and her laptop's helpful automation. Sometimes, she reflected, the best security audits were the ones you conducted by being exactly as messy and human as the systems you were trying to protect. Now she just had to turn her accidental discovery into an intentional solution before whoever set this trap realized they'd been caught in one of their own. For days. No pressure. The confrontation came at dawn, when Amelia was running on 2 hours of sleep, 3 espressos, and the manic energy of someone who'd spent the entire night setting digital tripwires on a hidden network. She was in the operations center, surrounded by a chaos of her own making, laptop cables snaking across the floor, post-it notes covering every available surface with network protocols and data timestamps. Her phone propped against a coffee cup running a packet-sniffing application she'd coded in the past 4 hours. The door opened with enough force to rattle the hinges. Gaudenzio stood in the doorway, still in yesterday's shirt with the sleeves rolled up, his hair slightly disheveled in a way that should have made him look less dangerous, but somehow achieved the opposite effect. His expression was thunderous. What, he said with deadly calm, did you do to my security system? Amelia looked up from her laptop, where she was currently monitoring 17 different data streams. I optimized it. You're welcome. My men can't access the cameras. The door locks are responding 3 seconds slower than normal. And Salvatore's phone just locked him out of his own email because apparently it's now flagged as a potential security threat. Gaudenzio stepped into the room and Amelia became acutely aware that they were alone and he was very, very angry. Explain. I implemented active monitoring on all network-connected devices, Amelia said, standing to face him. The cameras are fine, I just rerouted their feeds through an encrypted checkpoint so if anyone tries to access them remotely, we'll know. The door locks have additional authentication protocols now, and Salvatore's phone is flagged because it's been pinging that hidden network every 6 hours for the past 2 weeks, which means either he's compromised or his device is. You did this without authorization. You gave me full access and 4 days to find your vulnerabilities, Amelia shot back. That's exactly what I'm doing. By creating chaos? By disrupting established protocols that have kept this operation secure for years. Gaudenzio moved closer, and she had to resist the urge to step back. You've been here 3 days, Miss Nerli. 3 days. And you think you understand our security better than people who've dedicated their lives to it. I understand digital security better than people who are pretending it doesn't exist. Amelia's exhaustion was fraying her professional filter. Your established protocols had a rogue wireless network running under your noses for 6 months. Your secure operation was bleeding data to God knows who while you were all congratulating yourselves on your impenetrable physical security. So your solution is to make everything more complicated? To add more technology, more digital vulnerabilities, more points of failure. My solution is to acknowledge that we're living in the 21st century. Amelia gestured at her chaotic workspace. Yes, it's messy. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, there are more moving parts. But pretending technology doesn't exist doesn't make you safe, it just makes you blind. It makes us controlled, Gaudenzio countered. Every piece of technology is another way for enemies to reach inside our walls. Another vulnerability. Another betrayal waiting to happen. So you'd rather have no walls at all? Because that's what you have right now, a beautiful illusion of security that anyone with basic technical knowledge can walk right through. Better than inviting the threat inside ourselves. His voice rose for the first time, and Amelia realized with a shock that this wasn't just anger. This was fear. Better than handing them the weapons to destroy us. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Amelia took a breath, forcing herself to think past her exhaustion and frustration. What happened? She asked quietly. What made you so afraid of digital systems? Gaudenzio's jaw tightened. That's not relevant. It's completely relevant. You're not stupid, and you're not ignorant. You've built a multinational operation that requires sophisticated coordination. But you treat technology like it's poison. She held his gaze. Someone used it against you. Someone you trusted. For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then he moved to the window, his back to her, hands clasped in that familiar thinking pose. 7 years ago, he said finally, his voice carefully controlled, I hired a security consultant. Young, brilliant, recommended by people I trusted. He convinced me that our communications needed to be modernized. Encrypted phones, secure messaging, cloud backup of critical documents. He paused. He was working for the Battaglia family. Everything we sent through his secure system went directly to them. They used it to target a shipment, ambush the convoy. Another pause, heavier this time. My cousin and 2 of his sons died in that ambush. Because I trusted someone who promised me that technology would keep us safe. Amelia felt something tight in her chest. I'm sorry. Pietro was right, Gaudenzio continued. He warned me. He said tradition exists for a reason, that the old ways have survived because they work. And he was correct. That technology, that modernization, cost me family. That wasn't technology's fault, Amelia said carefully. That was a person using technology to betray you. There's a difference. Is there? He turned to face her. Every system can be compromised. Every encryption can be broken. Every secure connection is just another opportunity for someone smarter or more motivated to exploit. You're right, Amelia said, and saw surprise flicker across his face. Every system can be compromised, including the one you're using now. Traditional communication, paper documents, trusted advisors, those can all be betrayed too. Pietro's methods didn't stop someone from planting that wireless network. Your physical security didn't prevent 6 months of data leaks. So, what's your solution? Trust nothing? Trust everything? Trust intelligently, Amelia said. Use technology, but verify it. Implement digital security, but monitor it. Don't avoid the modern world, learn to navigate it better than your enemies do. She moved closer to him. Your cousin didn't die because you used technology. He died because you trusted the wrong person with it. And avoiding all technology won't prevent that kind of betrayal. It just means the next betrayal will use different tools. Gaudenzio was quiet for a long moment, studying her with that intense focus that made her feel simultaneously exposed and seen. You have no fear, he said finally. You walk into a room full of armed men and tell them they're doing everything wrong. You disrupt systems you barely understand, create chaos, and call it optimization. His head tilted slightly. Why? Because I'm terrified, Amelia admitted. I'm absolutely terrified every moment of every day. But being afraid doesn't mean being paralyzed. You taught me that, actually. I did. You could have fired me for that voice message. You could have made me disappear for the security breach with my laptop. Instead, you gave me a chance to prove my value. She gestured at her chaotic workspace. So yes, my methods are messy. Yes, I'm improvising half the time and hoping my code doesn't break everything. But I'm trying, because standing still and hoping the threats go away is the only guaranteed way to fail. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair. Close enough to be dangerous in an entirely different way than she'd anticipated. You think my fear makes me weak, he said softly. I think your fear makes you human, Amelia corrected. But letting that fear control your decisions makes you vulnerable. And you're too smart to let that happen. And if I trust your methods and they fail? If your digital security becomes another weapon used against us? Then I'll take responsibility, Amelia said. But at least we'll fail fighting with every tool available, not because we refuse to pick up half of them. Gaudenzio studied her for another long moment, and something shifted in his expression, a decision being made, a wall being lowered. Show me, he said. What? Show me what you've done. Explain your optimizations, your monitoring systems, your digital tripwires. Make me understand. His intensity was focused entirely on her now. You want me to trust modern methods? Then teach me to see what you see. Amelia felt her heart rate spike for reasons that had nothing to do with professional anxiety. That could take hours. I have 3 days until the Bellomo transfer, Gaudenzio said. And apparently, everything I thought I knew about security is wrong. So teach me, Miss Nerli. Show me how to fight a war I didn't know I was losing. She took a breath, then moved to her laptop, gesturing for him to join her. As he leaned over her shoulder, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtly dangerous, she pulled up her monitoring dashboard. Okay, she said, trying to focus on the screen instead of his proximity. This is real-time data flow across the hidden network. Every device that connects, every packet of data transmitted. See these spikes? Those are automated check-ins from compromised devices. And this pattern here, someone's accessing the network right now, Gaudenzio said, his voice sharp. Amelia's fingers flew across the keyboard. Not just accessing. Uploading. Something big. She traced the data signature. It's coming from the server room. Someone's down there right now, using the hidden network. Their eyes met. 3 days, Gaudenzio said quietly. You may have just given us our traitor. As he pulled out his phone to alert his security team, Amelia realized that somewhere in the past 10 minutes, the dynamic between them had fundamentally shifted. He wasn't just testing her anymore. He was trusting her. Actually trusting her methods, her expertise, her chaotic digital approach. And that trust, she was beginning to understand, was far more dangerous than his anger had ever been. When fear becomes a strategy, does it protect us or paralyze us? And what happens when trust becomes the most dangerous gamble of all? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Gaudenzio is right to fear technology, or is Amelia's approach the only way forward? And subscribe to find out who's in that server room and what they're uploading, because in 3 days, everything comes to a head. The server room at 2 in the morning was surprisingly intimate for a space filled with humming electronics and the sharp smell of cooling fans. Amelia sat cross-legged on the floor, her laptop balanced on her knees, surrounded by Ethernet cables and the scattered remains of what had been a very expensive security system before she'd systematically disassembled it. Gaudenzio sat beside her, not across from her, not at a professional distance, but close enough that their shoulders occasionally brushed when one of them leaned forward to point at something on the screen. They'd been here for 4 hours, ever since his security team had swept the server room and found it empty. Whoever had been uploading data had finished and vanished before they'd arrived, leaving only digital footprints that Amelia was now painstakingly tracing. Explain this again, Gaudenzio said, his accent thickening slightly with exhaustion. He'd ditched his jacket somewhere around midnight, and his shirt sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms that Amelia was deliberately not noticing. She was failing at deliberately not noticing. This is the data packet signature, she said, pulling her attention back to the screen with effort. Think of it like a fingerprint. Every device that connects to a network leaves traces, specific patterns in how it communicates, what protocols it uses, how it formats data. She highlighted a section of code. This signature tells me the upload came from a device running Linux, using a specific version of an encryption protocol that's not standard. Which means whoever's doing this isn't just technically competent, they're sophisticated. This is military-grade encryption, the kind you don't just download from the internet. She ran another trace. And they're routing the data through what looks like 7 different proxy servers across 4 continents before it reaches its final destination. Gaudenzio leaned closer to study the screen, and Amelia became acutely aware of the warmth of him, the subtle shift of fabric as he moved. Can you trace it? I can try, but it'll take time. They've set this up to be deliberately obscure. She pulled up another window, her fingers flying across the keyboard. But they made one mistake. What mistake? They're confident. They've been operating for months without detection, so they're getting comfortable. Lazy. She pointed to a timestamp. See this? They uploaded during the regular security shift change. Same time as last week. Same time as the week before. They have a pattern, which means we can predict when they'll do it again, Gaudenzio finished. His eyes met hers, and something sparked in that gaze. You're brilliant. Amelia's breath caught. I'm adequately caffeinated and moderately competent with code. You're brilliant, he repeated, and there was something in his voice that made it not about the code at all. She looked away first, focusing on her screen with sudden intensity. We should set up monitoring for the next shift change. If they follow the pattern, they'll upload again tomorrow night around the same time. We can be ready. Can you identify who it is from the device signature? Not definitively, but I can narrow it down. She pulled up her device inventory, cross-referencing it with the network logs. The upload came from inside the compound, which limits the pool. And based on the sophistication, it's someone with technical knowledge and access to specialized equipment. She hesitated. How many people fit that description? In my organization? Maybe a dozen. His expression darkened. People I've trusted. People who've been with me for years. It might not be one of your people directly, Amelia offered. Could be a compromised device. Someone who doesn't know their phone or laptop has been infected with surveillance software. You don't believe that? She didn't. The precision of this operation, the deliberate timing, the sophisticated routing, this was intentional. But saying so felt cruel when she could see the weight of potential betrayal settling on him. I believe we should follow the evidence, she said carefully. Gaudenzio was quiet for a moment, then reached past her to point at something on the screen. His arm brushed hers, and neither of them moved away. This file, he said. The large upload from tonight. Can you see what it contained? Amelia pulled up the packet analysis, trying to ignore the fact that he was close enough that she could feel his breath on her neck. It's encrypted, but I can see the file size and format. Looks like documents. PDFs, probably. Multiple files compressed together. She ran a metadata extraction. Total size suggests maybe 50 to 100 pages of documentation. The Belomo contracts, Gaudenzio said quietly. We finalized them today. Only 5 people have access to the complete set. Their eyes met, and Amelia saw the calculation happening behind his gaze, the narrowing of suspects, the cold assessment of who could and would betray him. Pietro, Salvatore, your legal counsel, and, she prompted, Marco, my executive coordinator. And myself. He leaned back against the server rack, suddenly looking every one of his years. 5 people. One of them is selling me out. Or one of their devices is compromised, Amelia insisted. We can't assume. In my world, Miss Nerli, assuming the best of people gets you killed. His voice was soft, but edged with something hard. Trust is a luxury I can't afford. Then why trust me? The question came out before she could stop it. Gaudenzio looked at her, really looked at her, and the intensity of it made her pulse spike. I haven't decided if I do. Yet you're sitting on a server room floor at 2 in the morning, letting me dismantle your security systems and accuse your most trusted people of treason. Perhaps I'm keeping my enemies close, he said, but there was something in his eyes that contradicted the words. Am I your enemy? Amelia asked quietly. I don't know what you are. The honesty of it hung between them, sharp and electric. Amelia should have looked away, should have returned her attention to the laptop, should have maintained some semblance of professional distance. Instead, she held his gaze and said, I'm someone trying to keep you alive. Even if my methods are chaotic and my filing system is a disaster and I accidentally commit minor security breaches with alarming frequency. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Your chaos may be the most honest thing in my organization. That's depressing. That's reality. He shifted slightly, somehow ending up closer despite the limited space. Everyone else tells me what they think I want to hear. You tell me I'm a pompous dinosaur running my operation into the ground. I apologized for that. Don't. His eyes held hers. It was the most useful critique I've received in years. The air between them had changed, charged with something that had nothing to do with encrypted files or security breaches. Amelia was acutely aware of every point where they were almost touching shoulders, knees, the bare inches between his hand and hers on the floor. "We should focus," she said, her voice not quite steady. "The upload. The pattern. Finding who's Amelia." It was the first time he'd used her first name, and the sound of it in his accented voice did something dangerous to her equilibrium. She looked up and found him watching her with an expression that made her forget entirely what she'd been saying. "This is a terrible idea," she whispered. "Catastrophically bad," he agreed, not moving away. "You're my boss. This is a professional arrangement. I'm here to do a job, and getting involved would be reckless," Gaudenzio finished. "Inappropriate. Potentially disastrous for both of us." "Exactly." Neither of them moved. "In 2 days," he said quietly, "the Bellomo transfer completes. Your assignment ends. You return to your regular position, and this," he gestured at the server room, at the scattered cables and the intimacy of their shared space, "becomes a strange week we both remember professionally." "That's the logical outcome," Amelia agreed. "Logic would suggest we maintain appropriate boundaries." "Absolutely." His hand moved, fingertips brushing against hers on the floor between them. It was barely contact, hardly intentional, but Amelia felt it like an electric shock. "Logic," Gaudenzio said, his voice lower now, "has never been particularly useful when it comes to things I want." Amelia's breath caught. "And what do you want?" He leaned closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough that moving forward even an inch would close the distance between them entirely. "To trust someone," he said quietly. "Completely. Without calculation or fear of betrayal." His gaze held hers. "And that terrifies me more than any security threat." The vulnerability in those words, from a man who controlled everything and revealed nothing, cracked something open in Amelia's chest. "I'm not asking you to trust me," she whispered. "I'm asking you to trust my methods. There's a difference." "Is there?" His hand covered hers now, deliberate and warm. "Because right now, they feel remarkably similar." Amelia should have pulled away. Should have returned to the laptop, to the evidence, to the professional distance that kept this manageable. Instead, she turned her hand over, letting her fingers intertwine with his. "This is still a terrible idea," she said. "The worst," Gaudenzio agreed. The laptop between them chimed with an alert, incoming data on the hidden network, another device connecting. The spell broke. They pulled apart, professionalism snapping back into place like armor, but something fundamental had shifted. As Amelia pulled up the new data stream, her hand still warm from his touch, she realized that somewhere in the past 4 days, this had stopped being just an assignment. And that was far more dangerous than any digital threat they were facing. "The device just connected," she said, forcing her voice steady. "Same signature as before. They're checking the network, probably confirming their upload went through." Gaudenzio leaned over her shoulder, close, but not touching now, the memory of contact still electric between them. "Can you trace the physical location?" "Working on it." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "Signal strength suggests close. Very close. Same building." They looked at each other. "Someone's awake," Gaudenzio said softly, checking their work. "Making sure the contracts reached whoever they're selling them to." "In 2 days, they'll have everything they need," Amelia said. "Complete acquisition details. Security protocols. Everything. Then we have 2 days to stop them." His jaw set with determination. "And to decide what we're going to do about this." He didn't specify whether this meant the security breach or what had just happened between them. Amelia suspected it was both. The pattern emerged at 4 in the morning, when Amelia's eyes were burning and she'd consumed enough espresso to fuel a small aircraft. She'd been staring at data flows for so long that the numbers had started to blur together, which was probably why she almost missed it. A tiny anomaly in the upload schedules. A slight variation in file sizes that didn't match the source documents. "That's wrong," she muttered, sitting up straighter at the workstation in the operations center. Gaudenzio, who'd been reviewing physical security protocols at the main table, looked up immediately. They'd maintained careful professional distance since the server room, but his attention was always on her now, tracking her movements with an awareness that made her skin prickle. What's wrong? These file sizes. Amelia pulled up two windows side by side. The contracts that were uploaded to the hidden network last night, they're larger than the source files on your secure server. Not by much, maybe 2 or 3%, but they're definitely bigger. Could be compression differences? No, that would make them smaller, not larger. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, running a binary comparison. Something was added to these files before they were transmitted. Extra code embedded in the documents themselves. Gaudenzio moved to stand behind her chair. What kind of code? That's what I'm trying to. She stopped, her breath catching as the analysis completed. Oh God. Amelia, she pulled up the extracted code, her heart hammering as she recognized the structure. It's a Trojan. A sophisticated one embedded in the contract PDFs. When these documents are opened on the target system, probably during the transfer ceremony, it'll execute. Execute what? Her hands were shaking as she traced the command sequences. It's designed to communicate with the security system. Not your security system, the one at the Bellomo estate where the ceremony is happening. She looked up at him, fear sharp in her chest. Whoever receives these contracts can use the embedded code to access the estate's security infrastructure. Cameras, door locks, alarm systems, everything. Gaudenzio's expression went absolutely cold. They're planning to breach the ceremony. Not just breach. They'll have complete control. They can unlock doors, disable alarms, create blind spots and camera coverage. Amelia pulled up the code execution timeline. And based on these triggers, it's designed to activate during a specific time window, probably the exact moment when everyone's focused on the contract signing and security is expecting minimal threat. An assassination, Gaudenzio said quietly. During the ceremony, with all the senior leadership present. Both families. It's perfect, Amelia said, horror creeping into her voice. Everyone will be there. Guards will be watching for external threats, not realizing the security system itself has been weaponized. And in the chaos afterward, it'll look like the Bellomo family's own security failed. No one will think to check for digital manipulation. Who uploaded these files? Amelia pulled up her logs, tracing the device signature back through her carefully constructed monitoring system. The answer appeared on her screen, and her stomach dropped. No, she whispered. Gaudenzio leaned closer, reading over her shoulder. His entire body went rigid. The device signature matched exactly one system in her inventory, Pietro Moretti's encrypted tablet. The one he used for sensitive family business. The one only he had access to. There has to be a mistake, Amelia said, even as she ran the trace again. Someone could have cloned his device, spoofed the signature. Show me the upload times, Gaudenzio interrupted, his voice dangerously calm. She pulled up the timeline. 7 uploads over the past 3 weeks, each one occurring during the early morning hours. She cross-referenced them with the security logs she'd been reviewing. These timestamps, she said slowly. They match the times when Pietro was documented as being in the compound. Not just in the compound, specifically in locations where he'd have access to the server room or the secure network equipment. Circumstantial, Gaudenzio said, but there was no conviction in it. Amelia dug deeper, pulling up the metadata embedded in the files themselves. The documents were accessed from the secure server using Pietro's credentials. Modified, the Trojan code was inserted and then uploaded through the hidden network. She looked up at him. The hidden network that was installed 8 months ago by the IT contractor Pietro personally recommended. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. He's been planning this for months, Gaudenzio said finally. Since before the Bellomo acquisition was even announced. It explains why he was so aggressively anti-technology, Amelia said, the pieces falling into place with horrible clarity. He wasn't protecting you from digital threats, he was making sure no one else was looking for them. As long as everyone believed the only real security was physical, no one would think to check for digital manipulation. And his loyalty, Gaudenzio's voice had gone flat, emotionless in the way that meant he was feeling too much. His traditional values, his 3 decades of service, all of it was cover. The perfect cover, because who would suspect the man who's saved my life multiple times? Amelia reached for his hand without thinking, then stopped herself. We don't know why. Maybe he's being coerced. Maybe someone has leverage, the why doesn't matter. Gaudenzio moved away from her, pacing to the window with controlled precision. What matters is the Bellomo ceremony is tomorrow night. If these contracts are already in the hands of whoever he's working with, the attack is imminent. We can cancel the ceremony, Amelia said. Postpone until we can verify and lose the acquisition. Show weakness to every family watching this transfer. Prove that we can't even complete a simple business transaction without paranoia and delays. He turned back to her. No. The ceremony happens as planned. Then we're walking into a trap. We're turning the trap against them. His eyes were hard, calculating. Can you modify the Trojan? Change what it does without them knowing you've touched it. Amelia's mind raced. Maybe. If I can access the version they have, but I don't know where it was sent. The routing goes through too many proxies. Then we don't modify theirs. Gaudenzio moved back to the workstation, leaning over her with focused intensity. We create our own version. Send it through Pietro's device, make it look like an update or correction to the contracts. Replace their weapon with ours. That's insane, Amelia said. If they verify the code, if they compare it to the original, they won't have time. The ceremony is in 36 hours. They'll be finalizing their plan, positioning their people. They won't expect us to know, let alone to counterattack. His hand came down on the desk beside her, not quite touching but close. Can you do it? Amelia looked at the code on her screen, at the elegant digital poison that had been crafted to kill everyone she'd spent the past week working with. Her exhausted brain was already parsing the structure, seeing ways to reverse it, to turn the weapon around. I can do it, she said. But we need Pietro to transmit it. If it comes from any other device, they'll know we're onto them. Pietro will be in the operations center this afternoon for the final security briefing, Gaudenzio said. His tablet will be with him. You want me to hack his device? During a meeting? With him right there. I want you to do what you do best, Miss Nerli. Create chaos in the digital space while everyone's focused on the physical. Something dangerous flickered in his expression. And I'll keep him distracted. If this doesn't work, we're all dead tomorrow night anyway. He held her gaze. But I trust your chaos more than I trust his order. The weight of that trust settled on Amelia's shoulders like armor and burden both. She pulled up a fresh coding window, her fingers hovering over the keys. I'll need complete access to the security system at the Bellomo estate, she said. Floor plans, camera placements, door lock protocols, everything. You'll have it within the hour. And I need you to promise me something. Gaudenzio raised an eyebrow. I'm not in the habit of making promises blindly. Promise me that when this is over, when we've stopped whatever Pietro has planned, you won't shut down every digital system in revenge. She looked up at him. Technology didn't betray you. Pietro did. And he used your fear of technology to hide what he was doing. For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then he nodded slowly. When this is over, Miss Nerli, you're going to teach me to stop fearing the tools and start understanding them. Agreed. Agreed. Now show me how we turn Pietro's poison into our antidote. Amelia took a breath and started typing. The code that appeared on her screen was complex, elegant, and absolutely ruthless. Instead of giving Pietro's conspirators access to the security system, it would lock them out. Instead of creating blind spots, it would highlight every unauthorized presence. Instead of disabling alarms, it would trigger a lockdown that would trap anyone who tried to breach the ceremony. It's beautiful, Gaudenzio said softly, reading over her shoulder. And terrifying. Welcome to modern warfare, Amelia replied. No guns required. As her code took shape, transforming Pietro's assassination tool into a digital cage, she felt Gaudenzio's hand settle on her shoulder, brief, warm, grounding. Whatever happens tomorrow, he said quietly, you should know that you've already saved more lives than you realize. Including mine. Amelia looked up at him, at the man who'd taken her accidental insult and turned it into an opportunity, who'd let her chaos disrupt his controlled world, who was trusting her digital expertise over 3 decades of traditional wisdom. Let's make sure we both live to argue about security protocols afterward, she said. His smile was sharp and fierce. "Miss Nerli, I'm counting on it." They had 36 hours to trap a traitor, stop an assassination, and survive a ceremony that was designed to kill them all. And their best weapon was the same technology Pietro had convinced everyone to fear. The irony would have been poetic if it weren't quite so deadly. The Bellomo Estate's Grand Hall was exactly the kind of place where history was made and people died, often simultaneously. Amelia stood in the back corner, her tablet concealed in a leather portfolio that matched her hastily purchased formal dress, watching the ceremony unfold with her heart hammering against her ribs. The room was packed with exactly the kind of people who made normal civilians very nervous. 24 senior members from both families, their attorneys, security personnel stationed at every entrance, and enough barely concealed weapons to start a small war. At the center of it all, Gaudenzio sat at the signing table across from Don Bellomo. The contract spread between them like a peace treaty that was actually anything but. Pietro stood directly behind Gaudenzio's right shoulder, the perfect image of the loyal consigliere. His tablet was in his hand, ready to verify the digital signatures and confirm the transfer. Ready to execute the Trojan that would unlock every door and disable every alarm. Except the Trojan waiting in those contracts wasn't his anymore. It was Amelia's. She'd spent 16 hours recoding the poison, then 6 more anxious hours yesterday afternoon in the operations center while Gaudenzio had kept Pietro occupied with endless security protocol reviews. She'd accessed Pietro's tablet remotely, replaced the original files with her modified versions, and covered her digital tracks so thoroughly that even she had trouble finding them afterward. The theory was sound. The code was perfect. But theory and reality had a nasty habit of diverging at the worst possible moments. Her tablet vibrated silently. The monitoring app she'd created showed the contracts being opened on Pietro's device. Any second now, he'd trigger the embedded code. Gaudenzio caught her eye across the room. The slight nod he gave was barely perceptible, but she felt it like a physical touch. Trust. He was trusting her chaos to save them all. No pressure. Don Bellomo signed the final page with a flourish, his heavy rings catching the light from the crystal chandeliers. "And so our families unite for mutual prosperity," he said in heavily accented English, the words formal and rehearsed. Prosperity and strength, Gaudenzio agreed, signing his own name with controlled precision. Pietro leaned forward, his tablet extended. "If I may verify the digital signatures, Don Pisani?" This was it. The moment when Pietro would activate what he thought was his assassination code, and Amelia's countermeasures would either work perfectly or fail catastrophically. Pietro's finger touched the verification button. Nothing happened. For 3 agonizing seconds, absolutely nothing happened. Then every phone in the room buzzed simultaneously with an emergency alert. Security personnel reached for weapons. The lawyers looked confused. Don Bellomo's hand moved toward his jacket. "Gentlemen, please," Gaudenzio said calmly, rising from his seat. "This is expected." Pietro's face had gone absolutely white. He was staring at his tablet screen like it had personally betrayed him. Because it had. Instead of unlocking doors and disabling alarms, Amelia's code had done exactly the opposite. Every entrance to the Grand Hall was now sealed and encrypted. Every camera was active and recording. And every unauthorized wireless device in the building, including the 3 phones that belonged to people who had no business being at the ceremony, was now broadcasting its exact location to Amelia's monitoring system. "What is the meaning of this?" Don Bellomo demanded, his guards moving protectively closer. "The meaning," Gaudenzio said, his voice carrying across the suddenly tense room, "is that we have a problem with traitors." He looked directly at Pietro. Pietro's expression cycled through shock, denial, and then, horrifyingly, acceptance. "You knew." "We knew," Gaudenzio corrected. "Miss Nerli, if you would?" Amelia stepped forward, her tablet now openly displayed. She projected the screen onto the wall behind the signing table, where everyone could see the network monitoring data, the hidden device signatures, the evidence of months of careful betrayal. 3 unauthorized individuals are currently in this building, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Based on their equipment signatures, they're carrying weapons and wireless communication devices linked to the same network that's been leaking acquisition data for the past 6 months. She highlighted 3 red dots on the building schematic. 2 in the service corridor behind the kitchen. 1 in the security office, where he's been systematically disabling cameras. Lies, Pietro said, but his voice lacked conviction. The code you embedded in the contracts was designed to give these individuals access during the ceremony, Amelia continued. Unlock the doors, create blind spots, allow them to breach the hall during the signing when everyone would be focused on the documents. She met Pietro's gaze directly. You are going to kill everyone in this room and blame it on the Bellomo family's inadequate security. The room erupted in angry Italian from both sides. Gaudenzio raised one hand, and the silence that followed was immediate and absolute. Pietro Moretti, he said quietly, you have served this family for 30 years. You saved my life in Naples. You stood beside my father at his death. And you have been selling us to our enemies for how long? 8 months, Pietro said, and there was something almost like relief in his admission. Since the Battaglia family approached me with an offer I couldn't refuse. Money? Gaudenzio's voice was ice. Survival. Pietro's laugh was bitter. They have my daughter, Gaudenzio. Have had her for a year. Every week, they send me proof she's alive. Every week, they tell me what they'll do to her if I don't cooperate. His hands were shaking. I didn't want this. I never wanted this. But they knew exactly which pressure point would break me. The confession hung in the air like a death sentence. You could have come to me, Gaudenzio said, and for the first time, Amelia heard genuine pain in his voice. And said what? That I'd been compromised? That the daughter I thought was studying in Rome was actually being held hostage? You would have done what you're doing now, calculated the risk, and eliminated the threat. Pietro's eyes were haunted. I chose my daughter over my Dawn. I won't apologize for that choice, even if it costs me everything. It will, Gaudenzio said quietly. Amelia's tablet vibrated. The 3 unauthorized individuals were moving, heading toward the Grand Hall, presumably because their access codes weren't working and they were improvising. We have incoming, she said. 30 seconds. Gaudenzio gestured to Luca, who'd been waiting by the door with barely restrained violence in his posture. Secure the intruders. Alive if possible, but prioritize the safety of everyone in this room. Luca and 5 other guards disappeared into the corridor with lethal efficiency. Don Bellomo had remained silent throughout the entire exchange, his sharp eyes tracking everything. Now he spoke, his voice thoughtful. This is why you invited me to sign in my own estate rather than yours, Pisani. You were using my security as bait. I was using my own ceremony as bait, Gaudenzio corrected. Your estate simply provided the location. If I'm wrong about the threat, we proceed with the acquisition as planned. If I'm right, the sound of gunfire crackled from somewhere in the building, brief and controlled, followed by shouting. Then we eliminate the problem before it becomes catastrophic. The gunfire stopped. Silence stretched for an agonizing moment. Then Luca's voice came through Gaudenzio's earpiece, loud enough that Amelia could hear it from across the room. 3 targets secured. 1 minor injury to our team. Building is clear. The tension in the room didn't break so much as shift into something else, the dangerous calm after violence, where everyone was reassessing their positions and calculating new threats. Well, Don Bellomo said, almost conversationally. This has been educational. He looked at Amelia. Your security consultant is impressive, Pisani. Unconventional, but effective. She's proved invaluable, Gaudenzio agreed, his eyes finding Amelia's across the room with an intensity that had nothing to do with professional appreciation. Pietro had slumped into a chair, all the fight gone out of him. My daughter, he said quietly. Before you kill me, Gaudenzio, please find her. She's innocent in this. I'm not going to kill you, old friend, Gaudenzio said, and the sadness in his voice was genuine. You're going to help us locate your daughter, identify everyone who's been using you, and dismantle the network that thought they could destroy this family from within. He paused. And then you're going to disappear. Permanently. It's more mercy than you deserve, but your 30 years of service before this earns you that much. Pietro's eyes closed. Thank you. The ceremony concluded 40 minutes later, Once the authorities had been called, statements had been taken, and Don Bellomo had decided that the entire dramatic situation had actually strengthened rather than weakened the acquisition. Any family that can catch a traitor in their own ranks and still complete the deal is a family worth allying with, he'd said with evident satisfaction. The contracts were signed. The territory transferred. And Amelia had somehow survived her first, and hopefully last, Mafia assassination attempt. Gaudenzio found her on the estate's terrace afterward, where she'd escaped for air and the desperate need to stop her hands from shaking. "You did it," he said simply. "We did it," Amelia corrected. "Your trap, my code." "My traditional physical security would never have caught him," Gaudenzio said, moving to stand beside her at the railing. "Pietro was right that I would have calculated the risk. He was wrong that I wouldn't have tried to save his daughter first." He was quiet for a moment. "You showed me that my greatest vulnerability wasn't the technology one feared. It was the trust one placed in tradition without questioning it. And you showed me that tradition isn't the enemy," Amelia replied. "Fear is. Whether it's fear of the new or fear of questioning the old." He turned to face her fully, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "Your assignment is complete, Miss Nerli. The 6 days are up. The deal is done. You're free to return to your regular position. Is that what you want?" Amelia asked quietly. "What I want," Gaudenzio said, reaching for her hand with deliberate intent, "is to offer you a different position entirely. Head of Digital Security. Full authority to modernize our systems. With one condition." "What condition?" His smile was slight but genuine. "That you occasionally still tell me when I'm being a pompous dinosaur." Amelia laughed despite everything. "I think I can manage that." As the sun set over the Sicilian hills and the most dangerous week of her life came to an end, Amelia Nerli realized that sometimes the best security came from embracing chaos rather than controlling it. And sometimes the most dangerous risk wasn't digital at all. It was trusting someone enough to let them see your vulnerabilities and hoping they chose not to exploit them. When loyalty becomes a weapon and trust becomes a liability, how do we know which traditions to keep and which to question? And what does it cost to build something new on the ruins of old betrayals? Drop your thoughts in the comments about Pietro's impossible choice and whether Gaudenzio's mercy was wisdom or weakness. And if you want to see how Amelia and Gaudenzio navigate their new partnership, professional and otherwise, subscribe now, because their story isn't over. It's just beginning. 3 weeks after the Bellomo ceremony, Amelia stood in front of the entire Pisani family holdings board of directors, the same group chat she'd accidentally broadcast her career suicide to, and tried not to think about how many of these people were armed. The boardroom was pure old-world intimidation. Dark wood paneling, oil paintings of severe-looking Pisani ancestors, a table that could comfortably seat 30 people who'd all killed for less than a poor quarterly report. Every chair was filled with men in expensive suits who'd spent the past month watching her dismantle and rebuild their entire security infrastructure. Some of them looked impressed. Most looked skeptical. A few looked like they were actively planning her demise. Gaudenzio sat at the head of the table, impeccably dressed as always, his expression unreadable. They'd maintained scrupulous professional boundaries since the ceremony, no repeat of the server room tension, no acknowledgement of the thing that hung between them like a live wire. Just work, strategy sessions, and the careful dance of 2 people pretending they didn't want to abandon professionalism entirely. It was driving Amelia quietly insane. "Gentlemen," she said, activating the presentation on the screen behind her. 3 weeks ago, this organization's digital security was essentially non-existent. You had air-gapped systems you believed were unhackable, devices you didn't monitor, and a hidden wireless network operating under your noses for 6 months. She pulled up the first slide, a network diagram that looked like a child's chaotic scribble. "This is what your digital infrastructure looked like then." Salvatore, who'd warmed to her considerably after she'd saved his life, snorted. "Looks like a mess." It was a mess, Amelia agreed. A dangerous, exploitable mess. Now, this, she clicked to the next slide, showing a clean, organized network architecture, is what it looks like now. The transformation was dramatic. Encrypted communications. Monitored devices. firewalls and intrusion detection systems, regular security audits, and automated threat responses. Everything color-coded and labeled with the kind of obsessive organization that only came from someone who'd learned to impose order on their own chaos. Every device is registered and monitored, Amelia continued. Every wireless signal is accounted for. Every piece of data transmission is encrypted and logged. If someone tries what Pietro did, planting unauthorized networks, leaking sensitive information, we'll know within minutes, not months. And this doesn't make us more vulnerable. One of the older capos asked, his skepticism evident. All these digital systems, all these connections, more ways for enemies to attack us? More ways for us to see them coming, Amelia corrected. The old approach wasn't security, it was willful blindness. You can't defend against threats you refuse to acknowledge exist. She clicked to the next slide, showing the incident metrics from the past 3 weeks. Since implementing the new protocols, we've detected and blocked 17 attempted intrusions, identified 4 compromised devices before they could transmit sensitive data, and prevented 2 social engineering attacks that would have given external actors access to financial records. The room went quiet. 17 attacks? Don Carmine said slowly. In 3 weeks. That we know of, Amelia said. Before, you had no way to detect this activity. The attacks were happening, you just couldn't see them. Now you can. And more importantly, now you can stop them. She spent the next 20 minutes walking through specific cases, technical implementations, and the training program she'd developed for their security personnel. Some of it was over their heads. Encryption protocols and network segmentation weren't exactly cocktail party conversation, but she'd learned to translate the technical into terms they understood. Threats, defenses, victory conditions. When she finished, Salvatore was the first to speak. I'll admit, I thought this was insanity when Don Pisani first announced it. Putting our security in the hands of someone who'd been here less than a week, who'd insulted him to the entire board. He looked at Gaudenzio with something like respect. But the Don saw what we didn't. The world changed, and we didn't change with it. The question, another voice said, Marco, the executive coordinator who'd witnessed Amelia's original disaster, is whether we're ready to fully commit to this direction. Digital security is expensive. It requires constant updates, ongoing training, resources we've traditionally allocated elsewhere. All eyes turned to Gaudenzio. He stood, commanding immediate attention without effort. 3 weeks ago, I would have told you that tradition is our strength. That the methods my father used, and his father before him, were sufficient because they'd kept us alive for generations. He moved to stand beside Amelia at the presentation screen. I was wrong. The admission sent a ripple through the room. Miss Nerli called me a pompous dinosaur, Gaudenzio continued, and several people shifted uncomfortably at the reminder. She said my slow, ancient traditions would collapse our operation the moment someone with actual modern expertise attacked us. She was absolutely correct. His gaze swept the room. Pietro Moretti served this family for 30 years. He saved my life. And he nearly destroyed us, not because he was disloyal by nature, but because our refusal to acknowledge digital threats created a blind spot he could exploit. He gestured to the network diagram still displayed behind them. This is not abandoning tradition. This is ensuring we have a future to maintain our traditions in. The world has changed. Our enemies use technology. Our rivals use technology. And if we continue to pretend that physical security alone is sufficient, we won't survive another generation. So we're committing fully to this modernization? Salvatore asked. We're committing to preparation, Gaudenzio said. To using every available tool, traditional and modern, to protect this family and our interests. Which is why I'm creating a new senior position, Chief Security Officer, with authority over both physical and digital operations. He turned to Amelia. Miss Nerli has agreed to accept the role. The room erupted in a mixture of surprise and grudging approval. Amelia had known this was coming. They'd discussed it extensively, but hearing it announced publicly, seeing the shift in how these dangerous men looked at her, made it real in a way that terrified and thrilled her simultaneously. She'll have full budget authority for security implementations, Gaudenzio continued. Direct access to all operational information. and my complete support in making whatever changes she deems necessary. His eyes met hers, and something passed between them that had nothing to do with organizational charts. The future belongs to the prepared, not the traditional. And I intend for this family to be very, very prepared. The meeting concluded with the usual business: territory reports, financial reviews, the mundane administration of running a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise disguised as legitimate business. Amelia sat in the new seat that had been added beside Gaudenzio's at the table, taking notes on her tablet while men who'd once terrified her now deferred to her expertise on security protocols. It was surreal. It was dangerous. It was exactly where she wanted to be. Afterward, when the boardroom had emptied and they were alone, Gaudenzio remained seated, studying her with that intense focus she'd come to recognize as him working through something complicated. "You know this makes you a target," he said finally. "The other families will see you as a threat. Some of our own people will resent your authority. I accidentally called you a pompous dinosaur in front of the entire board," Amelia replied. "I think I've already established myself as someone with a dangerous relationship with self-preservation." His mouth curved slightly. "That voice message was the best mistake you've ever made. It was definitely in the top 3. What are the other 2? Amelia stood, gathering her materials with deliberate casualness. "Letting my laptop auto-connect to that hidden network. And accepting this position when I should probably run very far away from you and everything you represent. And yet you're still here." "And yet I'm still here," she agreed. Gaudenzio rose, moving around the table with that predatory grace that still made her pulse spike. "We've been very professional these past 3 weeks. Extremely professional. Appropriate boundaries. Proper workplace conduct." "Exemplary workplace conduct," Amelia corrected. He was close now, close enough that she could see the slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "And now you're my chief security officer. A senior position. Permanent fixture in my operation and my life." "Apparently so. Which makes this either a terrible idea or perfect timing." "Which makes what?" He kissed her. It wasn't tentative or questioning. It was deliberate and certain, the kind of kiss from someone who'd spent 3 weeks thinking about it and had finally decided the risk was worth taking. Amelia's tablet clattered to the floor, forgotten, as she reached up to grip his shoulders and kissed him back with 3 weeks of pent-up tension and want. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Gaudenzio rested his forehead against hers. "Completely inappropriate workplace conduct," he murmured. "Absolutely scandalous," Amelia agreed. "We should maintain professional boundaries." "Definitely." Neither of them moved apart. "Your chaos," Gaudenzio said quietly, "has completely disrupted my carefully controlled world." "Is that a complaint?" "It's a confession." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "I spent 30 years building walls to protect myself. Physical security, emotional distance, traditional methods that kept everything predictable and controlled. And then you walked in, called me pompous, and proceeded to demolish every assumption I'd built my life on." "I'm very good at demolishing things," Amelia said. "You're very good at building them too," he corrected. "Better security. Better systems. A better version of this organization than I could have created alone." His thumb brushed her cheek. "A better version of myself than I knew was possible." "That's the digital chaos at work," Amelia managed, her voice not quite steady. "Disrupting your pompous traditions one disaster at a time." His laugh was quiet and genuine. "Keep disrupting, Miss Nerli. I'm starting to prefer the chaos." 3 months ago, Amelia had been a disorganized executive assistant struggling with wax seals and handwritten ledgers. Now she was the chief security officer of a mafia family, kissing her boss in an empty boardroom, and somehow that felt like the least chaotic thing that had happened to her recently. "For the record," she said, "I'm still going to tell you when you're being pompous." "I'm counting on it," Gaudenzio replied. "And I'm still going to accidentally create minor security breaches with alarming frequency. I've accepted that as the price of your brilliance. And this," she gestured between them, "is probably going to complicate everything." "Catastrophically," he agreed. "But I've learned that the most valuable things are usually the most complicated." He kissed her again, softer this time. Besides, you've spent the past month teaching me that tradition without adaptation is just another word for stagnation. Time I applied that lesson to my personal life as well. As they finally left the boardroom, professionally distant in the hallways where guards might see, but with Gaudenzio's hand finding hers briefly in the shadows, Amelia reflected that she'd come to this compound expecting a 6-day trial and certain termination. Instead, she'd found a future she'd never imagined, built on the intersection of tradition and innovation, chaos and control, a pompous mafia boss and the clumsy secretary who'd accidentally insulted him into changing everything. The digital age had finally caught up with the Pisani family. And Amelia Nerli, with her post-it notes and her packet-sniffing applications and her complete inability to follow proper filing protocols, was leading them into it. One beautiful, chaotic disaster at a time. Thank you for listening until the very end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the story. There's another story like the one you just enjoyed on your left screen.